The discovery. Maxwell Frost stepped out of his thermal shelter into the biting cold of Glacius 7's morning. The twin suns hung low in the lavender sky, casting long shadows across the endless white expanse. He'd been on this frozen world for 14 months now, seeking the solitude that Earth's overcrowded cities could never provide. "Morning, Rosalind," he said, patting the dashboard of his retrofitted rover as he climbed into the driver's seat. The military surplus vehicle had become his most faithful companion in this desolate place. Its reinforced cabin and advanced sensor array made exploring the harsh wilderness possible. Max had once been a respected xenobiologist on Earth, specializing in extreme environment adaptations. But a corporate scandal, not of his making, had destroyed his reputation and driven him to this self-imposed exile. Novatech had used his research to develop biological weapons, and when he threatened to expose them, they'd framed him instead. Today felt different somehow. As he guided Rosalind through the narrow pass between towering ice formations that locals called frost fangs, an unusual sound cut through the still air. A high-pitched warbling cry, desperate and unlike anything he'd documented in his time here. What in the seven systems was that? Max muttered, adjusting his thermal goggles to scan the horizon. The sound came again, more frantic this time, from the direction of the partially frozen lake ahead. Something about the cry triggered a primal response, an instinctive recognition of distress that transcended species barriers. As he crested a small ridge, Max saw something that made him slam on the brakes so hard the rover skidded sideways. "Holy Mother of Mars," he whispered, fumbling for his camera. There at the edge of the frozen lake was a juvenile dragon. Not the mythical beasts of Earth's legends, but a Glacian drake, creatures rumored to inhabit the planet's most remote regions. The young dragon was about the size of a small shuttle craft, with scales that gleamed like polished opals in shades of midnight blue and fiery orange. Translucent spines ran down its back, refracting the sunlight into tiny rainbows across the snow. Few colonists had ever seen a Glacian drake. Most dismissed them as tall tales. But there was no mistaking what Max was witnessing, and it was in terrible trouble. The young drake struggled at the edge of a large hole in the ice, its intelligent amber eyes wide with terror. Each time it tried to climb out, its claws scraped uselessly against the slick surface, and the ice crumbled beneath its weight, plunging it back into the frigid water. With each failed attempt, the creature's movements grew weaker. Max's environmental sensors showed the water temperature hovering just above freezing. Even with their remarkable cold adaptations, Glacian drakes weren't aquatic. Hypothermia would set in quickly, followed by drowning once exhaustion took hold. The dragon's cries grew fainter, more desperate. Time was running out. The rescue. Max's mind raced as he watched the young drake's struggles grow weaker. Every fiber of his scientific training screamed caution: approach unknown megafauna slowly, observe from a safe distance, follow protocols. But the creature's desperate cries shattered all academic pretense. "All right, think Maxwell," he muttered, scanning his equipment. "You've got emergency climbing gear, thermal blankets, and about 10 minutes before that drake goes into hypothermic shock." He grabbed his ice axes, emergency rope, and thermal generator from the rover's storage compartment. The plan was insane: approach a potentially dangerous creature, risk falling through unstable ice, all to save something that might see him as a threat. As he approached the lake's edge, the young drake's amber eyes locked onto his. For a moment, both species stared at each other across the vast gulf of evolution. Then the dragon let out another pitiful cry, and Max saw something that made his decision final: intelligence. Fear. And unmistakably, a plea for help. "Easy there, beautiful," Max called softly, his breath forming crystals in the frigid air. "I'm here to help." The drake's head tilted slightly, as if trying to understand his words. Its struggles ceased momentarily, conserving energy while watching this strange, small creature approach. Max tested the ice carefully with his axe, mapping a safe path to the hole's edge. The surface groaned ominously but held his weight. He hammered ice anchors into the solid sections, creating a safety line back to shore. Here we go, he whispered, lowering himself to the ice hole's edge. The drake's eyes never left him. Up close, Max could see the creature's magnificent scales were already dulling from cold exposure. Its breathing was labored, and hypothermic tremors shook its powerful frame. Max pulled out his thermal blanket and emergency heat packs, activating them quickly. "This is going to feel weird, but trust me," he said, slowly extending the warming materials toward the drake. The creature flinched initially, then seemed to sense the warmth radiating from the blankets. It allowed Max to drape the thermal covering over its head and neck, where heat loss was most critical. "Good dragon," Max murmured, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Now comes the hard part." He secured his climbing rope around the drake's torso, just behind its wing joints. The creature was too weak to resist, but Max could feel the immense power in its frame even in this weakened state. "Rosalind," he called to his rover's AI system. "Engage winch protocol. Slow and steady pull." The rover's mechanical winch whirred to life, taking up the slack in the rope. Slowly, inch by inch, the young drake began to rise from the icy water. Max guided its claws to grip points on the ice edge, supporting its weight as the winch did most of the work. With a final heave, the drake collapsed onto solid ice, water streaming from its scales. It lay there panting, exhausted but alive. Max quickly wrapped more thermal blankets around the creature's body, setting up his portable heater to create a warm zone. The drake's eyes fluttered, but it remained conscious, watching his every move with what looked remarkably like gratitude. "That's it," Max said softly, settling down beside the massive creature. "You're safe now. Just rest." As warmth slowly returned to the drake's body, it lifted its great head and looked directly at Max. Then, in a gesture that would replay in his mind for years to come, the young dragon gently touched its snout to his gloved hand. The rescue was complete, but Max realized this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. Building trust. For 3 days, Max maintained a vigil beside the recovering drake in a sheltered alcove near his habitat. He'd rigged a temporary shelter using thermal tarps and heating units, creating a warm sanctuary where the creature could regain its strength. The dragon, Max had started thinking of it as Ember, due to the fiery orange patterns in its scales, showed remarkable resilience. By the second day, it was sitting upright, its intelligent eyes tracking Max's movements with curiosity rather than fear. "You're not like the stories say, are you?" Max mused aloud as he prepared another meal. He'd discovered that Ember had a fondness for the high-protein algae cakes he used for emergency rations, though the drake clearly preferred them warmed. Ember's head tilted at the sound of his voice, and Max swore he could see understanding in those amber depths. When he held out the food, the drake accepted it gently, careful not to let its sharp teeth graze his fingers. On the third morning, Max woke to find Ember standing at the shelter's entrance, gazing out at the frozen landscape. The drake's strength had fully returned, its scales gleaming with health and vitality. "I suppose you'll be leaving now," Max said, unable to hide the disappointment in his voice. He'd grown attached to the creature's presence, finding companionship he hadn't realized he'd been missing. But Ember didn't leave. Instead, the drake turned and made a series of soft, melodic sounds that seemed almost like speech. It approached Max and gently nudged his shoulder with its snout. "What is it, Ember?" Max asked, recognizing the urgency in the dragon's behavior. The drake moved to the shelter entrance and looked back at Max expectantly. When he didn't immediately follow, Ember returned and tugged at his thermal coat with careful precision. "You want me to come with you?" Max asked incredulously. Ember's response was unmistakable, a series of nods that left no doubt about the creature's intelligence. Max gathered his essential equipment and followed the young drake out into the morning air. Ember moved slowly, frequently looking back to ensure Max was keeping pace. They traveled for nearly an hour across the frozen terrain, following paths that seemed random to Max but clearly held meaning for his draconic guide. Finally, Ember stopped at the edge of a deep ravine carved between massive ice formations. The drake called out with a series of haunting notes that echoed off the crystalline walls. An answering call came from below, deeper and more resonant. Max's breath caught as a magnificent adult drake emerged from the ravine's depths. This one was easily 3 times Ember's size, with scales of deep sapphire blue edged in silver. The resemblance was unmistakable, this was Ember's mother. The reunion was both touching and terrifying. The adult drake examined her offspring thoroughly, checking for injuries with gentle nudges and soft trills. Then those ancient, intelligent eyes turned to Max. For a long moment, the 3 beings regarded each other in silence. Max felt as if he were being weighed and measured by an intelligence far older and deeper than his own. Then the adult drake did something extraordinary. She lowered her massive head in what could only be described as a bow of gratitude. Ember chirped excitedly, moving between Max and his mother as if introducing them. The young drake's meaning was clear, this human had saved his life, and now the ancient bond of debt and friendship had been established. Max found his voice at last. "She's beautiful, Ember. Your whole family is extraordinary." The adult drake's head tilted at his words, and Max realized with growing wonder that she understood him perfectly. What he didn't yet know was that this meeting would reveal secrets about Glacius 7 that would change everything he thought he knew about this frozen world. The truth revealed. The adult drake, whom Max began thinking of as Sapphire, led them deeper into the ravine than Max had thought possible. The walls soared hundreds of meters above, creating a sheltered microclimate where ice gave way to patches of hardy vegetation and steaming thermal vents. But it was what lay at the heart of this hidden sanctuary that took Max's breath away. An entire community of Glacian drakes lived here, dozens of them in various sizes and ages, their scales displaying the full spectrum of colors from deep midnight blue to brilliant gold. They moved with purpose and intelligence, tending to young, sharing food, and engaging in what could only be described as conversation through their complex musical calls. "This is impossible," Max whispered, his scientific mind reeling. The planetary surveys said the population was maybe a dozen individuals at most. Sapphire approached a particularly ancient drake whose scales had faded to pearl white with age. This elder's eyes held depths of wisdom that made Max feel like a child. When it spoke, its voice was different from the others, lower, more structured, almost like human. "Maxwell Frost," the elder drake said in perfectly clear standard Galactic, "we have been waiting for you." Max stumbled backward, his equipment clattering to the ground. You can speak." "We have always possessed language," the elder replied with what might have been amusement. "We simply choose when to use it with your kind. I am called Ancient Song by my people. Sapphire's offspring told us of your kindness, your courage in saving one of ours. But the surveys, the colonial reports, they all said drakes were non-sentient, barely above animal intelligence," Max stammered. Ancient Song's expression grew somber. "Your people see what they wish to see. It is easier to exploit a world when you believe its natives lack consciousness. We have watched human settlements expand, mining operations strip our traditional nesting grounds, all while pretending we do not exist." The truth hit Max like a physical blow. "The mining operations have new anchorage, they're destroying your habitat. Our young have nowhere safe to learn flight, to hunt, to grow strong," Sapphire added, her voice carrying notes of both sadness and anger. "That is why my son was so far from safety when the ice claimed him. We are being pushed to extinction by degrees." Max looked around at the hidden community, magnificent, intelligent beings reduced to hiding in remote corners of their own world. "This is genocide," he said quietly. "If the colonial authority knew you were sentient, had language, culture, would they stop?" Ancient Song asked. "Your own experience with the corporation called Novatech suggests otherwise. When profit is involved, your species shows remarkable creativity in justifying atrocities." The words stung because they were true. Max had seen firsthand how corporations could twist science, suppress evidence, destroy lives to protect their interests. "But you trusted me," Max said. "Why?" "Because you saved Ember without thought of reward or recognition," Sapphire replied. Because you risked your life for a creature you barely understood. Such actions reveal character that transcends species. Ancient Song stepped forward, fixing Max with an intense gaze. We have a proposal, Maxwell Frost. Your exile from human society, your expertise in xenobiology, your proven integrity, these make you uniquely positioned to help us. How? Document our intelligence, our culture, our plight. Create evidence that cannot be dismissed or suppressed. Help us find a way to coexist with your people before it is too late. Max felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. His disgrace on Earth, his self-imposed exile, even Ember's accident, it all seemed to have led to this moment. The colonial authorities won't listen to one disgraced scientist, he warned. Then we must make them listen, Ancient Song replied. We have survived ice ages and meteor strikes. We will not quietly fade away while corporations strip mine our children's future. Ember chirped softly and approached Max, nuzzling his hand. The message was clear, this young Drake's life had been saved for a purpose greater than either of them had imagined. Max looked around at the assembled Drakes, seeing not the dangerous megafauna of colonial reports, but a sophisticated civilization facing extinction. All right, he said finally. Let's save your people. The alliance between human and Drake was forged in that moment, but the real work was just beginning. A new beginning. 6 months later, Max stood before the Galactic Colonial Council on the capital world of New Geneva, his presentation materials queued and ready. Beside him, in a specially constructed environmental chamber, Ancient Song waited with the patience of centuries. The months of preparation had been intense. Max had documented everything, Drake societies, their sophisticated language, their ecological knowledge, their art forms expressed in ice sculptures that rivaled anything humans had created. Most importantly, he'd recorded hours of direct testimony from Ancient Song and other elder Drakes. The corporate representatives from Novatech and the mining consortium sat stone-faced as Max presented his evidence. They'd tried everything to discredit him, bringing up his past, questioning his methods, even attempting to have him arrested on fabricated charges. But they couldn't argue with video recordings of Drake speaking multiple human languages, discussing philosophy, and demonstrating mathematical concepts through their ice art. They couldn't dismiss the detailed ecological surveys showing how mining operations were systematically destroying Drake breeding grounds. The evidence is overwhelming, Max concluded his presentation. The Glacian Drakes of Glacius 7 are not only sentient but possess a civilization older than human spaceflight. Under Galactic Law Section 12, their world must be reclassified as an inhabited planet with full environmental protections. The lead mining representative, a corporate executive named Vance, stood up. This is all very touching, Dr. Frost, but you're asking us to shut down operations worth billions of credits based on the word of a disgraced scientist and some clever animals. Ancient Song's voice resonated through the chamber's translation system. Clever animals do not compose symphonies, Counselor Vance. Nor do they develop mathematical proofs, create historical chronicles, or make ethical arguments for coexistence rather than conquest. The assembly fell silent. It was one thing to see recordings, another to witness a dragon engaging in real-time debate. Your operations have destroyed 17% of our ancestral nesting grounds, Ancient Song continued. Your mining runoff has poisoned 3 major feeding areas. At current rates, our species will be extinct within 2 generations. We do not ask you to leave Glacius 7, only to share it responsibly. Council President Martinez looked uncomfortable. The economic implications are enormous. Thousands of jobs, established investments. As are the moral implications of committing genocide through willful ignorance, Ancient Song replied calmly. We offer partnership, not conflict. Drake knowledge of Glacius 7's geology could make mining operations more efficient while preserving our habitat. Our ice working techniques could revolutionize construction in extreme environments. Our understanding of cold weather biology could advance medical science. Max added, the Drakes aren't asking for reparations or revenge. They're offering to work with us to find solutions that benefit everyone. The debate raged for 3 days. Corporate interests fought hard, but public opinion had already turned. The footage of Ember's rescue, now broadcast across human space, had captured imaginations. The idea of wise, ancient dragons sharing their world with humanity appealed to something deep in the human psyche. The final vote wasn't even close. Glacius 7 was reclassified, mining operations were suspended pending environmental review, and the Colonial Authority established the first joint human-Drake research station. Max found himself appointed as the station's director, with Ember serving as his assistant and cultural liaison. The young Drake had grown considerably, his scales now showing the deep blue-green patterns of approaching maturity. Ready for the next adventure? Max asked as they stood together on the observation deck of the new research facility, watching human and Drake youngsters play together in the compound's courtyard below. Ember's response came in perfect standard Galactic, his voice now carrying the musical undertones of his people. I believe, my friend, that the adventure is just beginning. Through the wide windows, Max could see Sapphire and other adult Drakes working alongside human technicians to design mining equipment that worked with the planet's natural systems rather than against them. Ancient Song held court in the library, sharing millennia of accumulated wisdom with human scholars who hung on every word. The scandal that had driven Max from Earth seemed like a lifetime ago. His disgrace had become his destiny, leading him to discoveries that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the galaxy. As the twin suns set over Glacius 7, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that perfectly matched Ember's scales, Max reflected on the truth that had emerged from one desperate moment at a frozen lake. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and friendship can bridge even the vastest differences. The young Drake who had once struggled alone in icy waters now stood as a symbol of hope for two species learning to share one beautiful, frozen world. The end.